Hello, everyone. Welcome to the video of the year. This is the final Olympia Bikini breakdown. I know this is a little bit late and there's a reason for it. I wanted to wait to get judges' feedback, to hear from the judges, to hear from the athletes, to not just give my opinion of what I think happened at the Olympia and what I think the athletes need to improve on, but to actually get real information, not just from myself, and that the athletes are hearing from their judges, from the coaches, what they're planning on doing the next year. So this is going to be a lot more informative than the typical reviews where it's just my opinion. Now, I want to jump right in because I think the most important thing that people were talking about at the Olympia was Lee Chapados, right? Lee Chapados, she finished in that fourth place position. Why did she finish in that fourth place position? So let's go ahead and jump right into that, and let's hear from what the judges had to say, specifically Sandy Williamson, who is the head women's judge for the Olympia.
Very popular. I'm going to start with the bang here. I want to see you girls' response. I'm going to Romania. I'm going to turn off my cell phone. You girls deal with it. What happened to Lee Chapados, Sandy Williamson?
She came in a little bit too big. You know, when she won the Arnold, and the thing that I think that makes me very upset with the Arnolds is because there was not a lot of media there. So nobody saw the photos from the, you know what I mean? The photos, like, you know, when you go onto NBC News Online and you just didn't see the amount of photos that we normally see. And so I think she came in just a little bit too big. I don't think she was too soft. If you look at the Arnolds, I made this comment before. Everybody said to me, oh, they were both way too soft at the Arnolds. And I said to Tyler, are they too soft? And he goes, absolutely not.
So listening to Sandy Williamson about Lee Chapados tells you exactly what happened there, which is what I was thinking a few weeks before the show. When I was seeing her before the show, I was talking to other coaches as well. And they were saying, you know, do you think she needs to be this big? And I was like, I think that she's too big at this point. Her legs look like they're not wellness legs. So everyone always says, oh, they look like wellness. Wellness is a far leap, but she is definitely like in between bikini and wellness. And where you really see it is in the back post. So originally when I saw the Olympia, I thought to her, what I thought was, how did she place fourth being so big? You know, that was the thing, is she was clearly the biggest and just didn't fit the category for bikini. And I thought to myself, that's weird that she placed fourth. Is her, and that's the thing about Lee. She's never been the most balanced. So let's put that out there right away, right? She's always had overpowering glutes to her physique, but everything else is so good on her, she can offset it. That's how good she is. She can offset everything. And really, going into this show, it was her show to win. She needed to be off for anyone else to win that show. So it was a scenario of Lee beats herself. It's not that everyone's beating Lee. They're showing up 100% correct and doing their job, but Lee was not showing up 100% correct and not doing hers. And it seems to be that for some reason, it's just this Olympia thing. She overthinks it or doesn't bring what won her 2 Arnolds, and she just changes it up, and it always doesn't work in her favor. And this time, I think, was kind of the biggest detriment to her, because now she has to find a way to lose muscle and to lose size and still look good. And that's much harder to do than to gain muscle, right? And so, you know, I've known Lee since 2018, I think it is. We worked out together a few times and all that too. And she's a hard worker. I don't know anyone that really works out as hard as Lee in the bikini category. She's one of these girls that like loves to work out hard. And so when you have someone who loves to work out hard, now I'm not going to go into if this is her or not, but I can just tell you what happens to me as a coach. And I've coached thousands of athletes over the last 23 years. When I have a bikini athlete who really likes to work out hard and they get that muscular, and I say, okay, hey, it's time for us to pull back on your workouts. You're going to have to kind of slow your workouts down, stop. Usually that's where they lose motivation. I don't think she's the type to lose motivation. I don't know if that's her, but what I do run into is a lot of times women are like, they're just like, I'll just go up to figure. I'll go up to wellness, or I don't enjoy this anymore. I'm just going to work out for me, that type of thing. So I hope that doesn't happen, because Lee's one that everyone knows is going to win an Olympia championship, but she keeps making these small errors. Now, how did she get to fourth place is the biggest thing, right? How did she get to fourth when she's clearly the biggest? From the back, when you're comparing her next to bikini girls, yeah, she can look a little bit wellnessy. Next to a wellness girl, she would never look wellness. So let's just get that out there, because there's people saying, oh, she looks wellness. I'm like, next to a bikini girl, yeah, maybe she looks like she's wellness because she's so much bigger, but not next to a wellness girl. Next to a wellness girl, she looks like a bikini girl. So she's just a little bit too big for the category. I'm going to say about 5 pounds too big for the category. Based on her winning the Arnold at 131 pounds, she is a little big because she's about 136, 137 on the Olympia stage. So she was up about 5 pounds or so. And that looks to be purely muscle. And as you heard Sandy just say, her conditioning was not an issue. So it's not like she needed to be leaner and she was 5 pounds overweight in body fat. That was pure muscle. So hats off to her for putting on that muscle, her and Aldo out in Florida. They put on some serious muscle. They teach a lot of people how to work out properly, how to build the glutes. They clearly can do that. They did a great job at that. Unfortunately, too much, right? That's what they call it. They call the wagon. But how did she get, here's the thing. How did she even get to fourth when she's clearly too muscular for the division? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at her posing routine, which is a huge part of why she got to where she did. And honestly, I think that the posing routine really saved her in getting her placing a little bit higher. I in terms of her physique alone, I would have had her. I mean, I would have had her close to closer to the still in the top 10, but closer to that 10th place position. I would have to really break it down, but I'm probably talking somewhere in that 8th or 9th position just based on the physique alone. But look at this posing routine. And this is why Laura Lee is Laura Lee. She has, she on stage, she owns the stage. She's super confident. She has that, what do they say? The je ne sais quoi, right? They say, I don't know what, or they say I got picked that up from Tyra Banks, but she has that it factor, that X factor that people don't have. And her, even with having overpowering glutes at the Arnold and having, being even a little too big there, beat everyone. And by a far margin, she just stood out so much. But now she's standing out at the Olympia in the way that she doesn't want to stand out. Her glutes are too big. Her legs are too big. It's very obvious. Her balance is a little bit off. She's not wellness, so let's not get crazy and say she's wellness, but she is just a little bit past bikini by about, I would say, for the average bikini competitor, she's probably 8 pounds past bikini. But for her, she can pull it off with being about 5 pounds lighter in terms of the actual muscle tissue. So that is the only thing I think that really hurt her. I think that cost her an Olympia title coming in so big. I mean, actually, I know it's what cost her Olympia title coming in so big. It's unfortunate because, everyone knows she's going to win the Olympia eventually. It's just a matter of when. But now she has a hill to climb. This is going to be the hardest thing for her to do, to lose muscle and still look good going into the Olympia of next year. That's the hard part, because losing muscle is not that hard, but looking good, looking full, being glycogen loaded, having that like you pumped them full of air type of look, fullness that they want in bikini, having all that with downsizing at the same time while you're having to deplete your body to get downsized is a difficult task at hand. So can she do it? Yes. Will she want to do it? I would bet a lot of money saying she doesn't want to do it because she loves to work out. So that's where she's going to run into those issues. And I hope she figures it out. I mean, who isn't a fan of Laura Lee? Who isn't wanting her to win one? I'm in that category too. And it's been a lot of years where she's so close, but yet so far. So that's the biggest story of that. But for everyone saying, she shouldn't have placed fourth, there's a lot of arguments for her not to place fourth. I agree. I also think just based on the body alone, she shouldn't have placed fourth. But if you take everything into account, because I think if you look at bikini and we look at it like bodybuilding, which is just the body alone, right? We're not taking into account all these other factors. You're not talking about a bodybuilder's makeup and hair, right? We don't care about that. We don't talk about them from the neck down. That's all they care about in bodybuilding. But with Laura Lee, she's got the beauty flow. She's got the beautiful structure. She's got the best stage presence, right? She's got great flow. Her complexion's great. Muscles are really round and full. She's a beautiful girl, has that fitness model look. Like, there's so many things that go into bikini besides the physique. And you have to have those in brackets. Those are all brackets that you have to hit the box on, right? And she's winning a lot of those brackets. She's winning most of those brackets. So in the physique, yeah, I would probably have her physique alone, probably in that 8th spot. But everything else, you got to bump her up. So I do think the judges got it right. It's a tough one because it doesn't make a lot of sense. How do you beat a girl who just has those X factors there, right? Sorry, this is a genetic sport. You either got it or you don't. In some categories, she has it. In most categories, in one, she slightly didn't have it this time. That's what happened. All right, guys, moving on to one of the next stories is Amy Delgado, who was one of the favorites going into the Olympia to be in that top 3. I had a lot of people on my prior Olympia preview video actually having Amy winning the show. She has a lot of fans out there. She was definitely an up and rising talent this year. And what happened to Amy? How did she place 6th? Now, first off, I don't want to say what happened is that it's a bad way. Congratulations to Amy for placing 6th. Anyone in the top 15 this year is an absolute rock star. I'm going to go through quite a few of these athletes and little mistakes they made and things that they could do for this next season to make some big improvements. But top 6, 2 years in a row, like hats off to her. Crazy, crazy good job. Did she miss an opportunity to move up? I think the highest placing Amy could have gotten this year is about 4th place this year. I think that considering 5th place and considering 4th place, I think that she could have placed 4th if she brought in the perfect package. Unfortunately, she didn't bring in the perfect package. Let's go ahead and listen to what Sandy has to say about Amy at this year's show. And this is also what other judges have said at this year's show. And I'm going to go into it because this one is a little bit more confusing because it isn't what I've been saying this year, but I'm going to explain a little bit more thoroughly how what Sandy is meaning by this. What I'm going to say, my interpretation of what Sandy is meaning by this. So let's go ahead and see what Sandy says here.
I mean, she was, someone I had in the top 5 originally.
I thought again for me, and I've already talked to Amy's coach. I thought she looked small up there compared. I thought, again, I think, and I talked to her coach, and that's exactly where they were struggling with, because she's been a little bit, been told she's been a little bit too muscular. So again, they're all going in trying to find what that look was going to be.
Okay, so you're hearing it from Sandy there that Amy was a little bit small. All right, so does she mean that Amy was actually a little bit small, or is there something else that she's meaning there? And so what I want to do is go into Amy's photos and show you guys what she looked like, which was honestly awesome. Amy looked really, really good. I'll definitely admit that Amy looked like a rock star at the Olympia. So looking at Amy, so what does Sandy actually mean by looking small, right? Does she actually look small? And to me, yeah, she doesn't look small. But what's happening with Amy? Why does Sandy say that? Well, again, remember we talked about a little bit that Laura Lee needed to downsize next year to win that Olympia championship. That's why I said, hey, it's going to be really hard for her to do that because it's a difficult thing to downsize. And that's what she's been struggling with, is the downsizing and fitting that perfect physique for bikini, because she pushes the limits a little bit and is a little bit muscular for bikini, right? And so that's the issue that she's been running into. And it's a tricky thing to do as a coach. So here's the thing. I saw Amy at the versus battle, which was, it was Ashley, Maureen, and Jennifer. That's who got the invite to the versus battle. Amy was at the gym. There's a bunch of people at the gym, like working out. Amy was at the gym, and then Tarek brought her into the versus battle. Was like, hey, jump in to the versus battle with these girls just to get some extra footage. And it was a cool thing. But when I saw her next to Jennifer and I saw her next to Maureen and Ashley, I was like, wow, Jamie looks really sucked down right now. She looks like she looked a little over dieted. Like she's already lean enough and doesn't need to be dieting any further than she's dieting at this point. She's already there, but she's still dieting and she looks like really depleted and sucked down. It's a tough thing to do. And that's why, one of the things that I do, and I don't take on a bunch of pros because it's difficult pros are difficult because the difference between splitting hairs between, 6th place and 4th place really came down to this little bit of, her being a little fuller and hitting the right fullness, right? So it's difficult. So that's why I have like the house set up by the gym here where the athletes can stay at. You see Phoebe, she was like living here for like 3 months, and you get a better eye on things when you see them. You're like, oh, hey, you are softer than you look under those lights that you have at your house, or you're harder than you look over those lights you have at your house, right? And I'm seeing you move. I'm seeing you next to people. I could see that when I saw her next to them, I was like, she looks a little bit small. That's surprising to me. She worked out with Phoebe too. And I was like, she looks a little bit small. That's surprising me how small she's looking. And so I think what happened was they were trying to bring her down to fit more of that bikini criteria. She did lose a little bit of muscle to fit that bikini criteria. And it's not that she was small. It's that she wasn't 100% filled out yet from losing size. When you lose size, you lose a little bit of that look, that little bit of like that pop and roundness and fullness, and you look like you're depleted a little bit. So it's not like she's small. And I think that when Sandy is saying that she looks small, it's not actual tissue, like muscle tissue. It's like the fullness and I guess you would say like the healthy, vibrant look and round look of the muscle just wasn't there that you typically see on Amy. And it's just because she's been, she hasn't worked quads for a really long time. She's talked about that. Her legs haven't really filled out the way that they were looking before. So she needs to have the balance of both. I think that this size is probably good if she's 100% filled out and if she isn't dieted down so hard the last few weeks, where she could fill out with like a good amount of time frame to do that and look good and healthy. And she needs to find that perfect balance of how much muscle should I have, right? Because that's the thing. She has the shape, she has the beauty, she's got the stage presence, she has the momentum, she's doing really, really great. She's probably going to win another 5 shows next season, but she's got to find that balance at these high level shows of bringing in the right amount of muscle, not too much, not too little, and having that muscle look full and vibrant and round. Because if it doesn't look full and vibrant and round for her, especially, she has very detailed, very grainy legs, right? They're very detailed. Like, I don't know. I think she did cheerleading. I think she said when she was younger, is that? And I don't know if that's just from the explosive sport of that, what caused her to have like the deep detail in her legs. But the more depleted she is, the more the leaner she is, the more of that detail you see in her. And then she looks more grainy, more hard. And it looks not bikini, right? So the balance of that is really tricky. And it's going to take a lot of visually seeing her. She's someone that honestly, you probably, if you're going to downsize her and bring her to Olympia, you probably want to see her like 3 times a week, the last like 4 weeks before the Olympia, for like Olympia level show. So it's going to take a lot to get that perfect balance. You're not going to be able to do it as like, hey, it's difficult online, right? It's a difficult thing to do online. I don't know what her scenario is. I don't know what she's seeing with her coach. It's just, that's a tricky one. And that's one of the reasons, like if I have a top level client, I'm going to probably try to have them like live here in Vegas for a few months before a show. If it's a Olympia level, Arnold level show, that type of thing, where we're really trying to see what they look like, because online it's difficult because you have no comparisons of who they're next to. You can't visually see them. The lighting's different in everyone's house, right? So with that one, I think that the highest she could have gotten was about 4th place. Who knows, maybe higher, but that's what I would have said. And I think that the mark was missed just a little bit because she didn't have that round, vibrant look. Losing muscle is difficult. So that balance is going to be a tricky thing to find, but want to see nothing but great things from her. I know she's going to be competing soon again here. And I wish her nothing but the best. She's an awesome girl. I've got to know her a little bit this year. She's a Vegas girl. I always want those Vegas girls to do good. That's the one thing I want to bring those titles back to Vegas. So thank you, Jennifer, for bringing that back. Moving on, guys, to Ariana Brothers, a new rising talent that I don't think anyone really saw coming in as a rising talent this year. This year I was talking earlier in the year and I was saying, there's not really any names that are coming through that are like these big names. Like 2 years ago was Amy, right? It was like, oh, there's a new rising talent. It's Amy. And then it was like, I don't know, 4 years ago, maybe, or 3 years ago, it was Daraja came on and she came out with a bang. And then there's always like those girls who like come out. And last year, there really wasn't any like big names of girls that were coming up and just kind of destroying shows as like new girls. And I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. There's no like real hype of any new girl coming in, just that's going to be destroying these shows. It has a ton of potential. And then all of a sudden, Ariana started showing up. And I was like, oh, this girl looks really good structurally. She doesn't have the density, but she looks really good structurally. I think that she's got a ton of potential. And then it's funny because I was talking to her coach, Paul, and we're buddies. We always razz each other, right? And I was like, dude, that girl could be an Olympia champion, but she doesn't have the density yet, right? And then a couple shows later, she started having like better density. And it was like, maybe it was, I don't know, a couple months later. And he's like, not enough density. Y'all like messing with me. And I was like, dude, when I said that, she didn't. She still needs more. But the density on her and how she's transforming is pretty remarkable. I could tell she's working really, really hard in the gym because I can visually see the difference of her improvements, not just in conditioning, from show to show. And that's the thing. A lot of times, I'll see improvements from an athlete show to show just based on their conditioning. And it's like, okay, cool. You got leaner. Like, it's not that hard to do. You get leaner, whatever. Right. But for her, she's actually improving muscularly and more density from show to show. And that's what she needs. She still has relatively new muscle. What I'm seeing, I'm only going based on how I'm seeing her transform. And the things that I think about Ariana is that she needs to get just a tiny bit more density. She needs a tiny bit better conditioning. That's the one thing I haven't seen from her yet. But here's the thing, guys. Remember, this is bikini, and she's doing this well with that level of conditioning. They obviously like her not super shredded. And that's the thing about bikini that I don't think people really understand is it's going to be very different per physique, per girl. How does Jennifer win, right, the Olympia, when she's clearly a lot softer than Ashley, right? If it was just conditioning, then Ashley would win. She's probably one of the leaner girls in the top 10, not the leanest. She's probably in the, third leanest maybe in that top 10, right? If it was just stage presence, well, then Laura Lee would win, right? If it was just glutes, then Laura Lee would win, right? If it was just shoulders, then probably Maureen would win, right? So it's like there's so much that goes into it. And with Ariana, they might like her with that level of conditioning. She's winning shows with it. So I don't know if gambling this year is probably going to be, you probably want to gamble. I would say you probably do want to gamble a little bit with her and bring her in a little bit tighter to see what they like and get her in front of the judges that are going to be at the Olympia, the Sandys, the Tylers, and all them. Because structurally, there's no limits on her. When we talked a little bit about, people were asking questions that talked about Daraj and what her potential is. The little bit of limits because her waist is a little bit wider, quads are a little bit more narrow. Ariana doesn't have any of those limiting factors that I've visually seen yet. Though, if they say, hey, you got to get your tie-ins to be way more deep, I don't know if that's going to be a limiting factor for her because she hasn't had them there yet. But I don't think they need to. If she's getting 7th already, that means she's already there. Doesn't need to change that much. Just get a little bit better next year. A little bit more muscle, maybe a tiny bit better condition, a little bit more density, and she should move up the ranks from there. And that's probably the safe bet. And then also the gambling bet would be going out throughout the year, competing at a few shows, bringing in a little bit tighter conditioning, see what the judges think of it so they know what to expect and how to kind of guide her into the Olympia of next year. But I'm really happy to see her progress. I wouldn't say that's a surprise. When I did my Olympia preview video, I had her as a maybe that could get in the top 10. So it's not a surprise, but I am happy to see it. And I could say I didn't see her placing that high. I was like, if she's going to get in the top 10, it's going to be like 10th or something, So congratulations to her. Huge potential. I think people are starting to see her. I think people were kind of sleeping on her a little bit because she wasn't winning a ton of shows. She wasn't that, like what I was talking about. There was no new hype of her being the new girl, but she's the new girl. That's who she is. She's the new girl. So she's the one coming in and placing top 10 at the Olympia, her first Olympia. She's pushing people down in the rankings and surprising quite a few people. So congratulations to her. I don't think she needs a ton of improvements when I'm looking at her overall physique. But one of the things I do think would help her when I'm looking at her from the back is that her tie-ins, they're where where the judges are saying, hey, we don't want to see too much more than that. I do think in her scenario, just a little bit more tie-in, just a tiny bit more glute fullness and a tiny bit more roundness of the hamstring. I'm talking like the whole backside, maybe a half a pound, 1 pound of muscle and a half a pound a better conditioning type of thing. Like a very, very minute difference would push her to the level. And that's how crazy Bikini is. It is really like that fine tuned at this level. And that's why I'm saying I like when I'm working, and that's why I'm not working with a ton of pros. Like I want the pros to be like, I want to see them before we're doing these big shows. The smaller shows, no problem. NPC athletes, no problem. It's not as hard. But when you're talking about getting into the top 10 and splitting hairs with someone between 4th and 6th based on 1 pound, 2 pounds being the difference, like, yeah, please let me see you more often in person. Let's train together. Let's get this fine tuned. Let's pose together. Let's do this right. So that's but with her, ton of potential. All right, guys, moving on now to the meat and potatoes of the Olympia. What happened between the top 3? How did it go down? And how clear cut was that decision? I think that this one is quite insightful from the judges here, from what Sandy had to say. So let's go ahead and take a listen to what she has to say.
You actually say the top 3 were the top 3 because all the judges send down who they want to see. And the top 3 were the majority from all the judges.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So crazy when that happens, because we're talking about a lot of judges saying that the top 3 are unanimously these top 3 girls. And it wasn't just unanimous, but it was to the point where let's go ahead and take a look at how judging went. And this is how unanimous it was. It was a pretty crazy scenario. You rarely see this happen at any level of show, but definitely not at an Olympia level show where this precise number of girls this happens to. So how does judging go? Well, the judging, everyone gets the first call out. This is the first call out. So you have everyone, I mean, mostly that we've talked about so far, Ashley, Maureen, Jennifer, Issa, Laura Lee, Amy, Ashlyn, and Ariana. Ariana gets moved to the outside. Ashlyn gets moved to the outside. Amy is moved in. Laura Lee is moved in as well. And then you have Ashley here, Jennifer, and Maureen in the middle. Now, what happens here during the judging is pretty crazy because it doesn't generally happen.
Maureen, Jed, and Ashley, make a step off stage. Don't go anywhere.
So as you see it there, guys, Jennifer, Ashley, and Maureen, they are sent off stage, right? I don't think people really understand what that means when someone is sent off stage. When you're sent off stage, that's like, okay, clearly those are the three. I was sitting there and I was so anxious and I was like, okay, that means that Ashley's top three, right? And it looks like she was in that third position because she was one off to the right. Laura Lee was one off to the left. So that would have been, they could have been, at the time I was like, okay, it's between Laura Lee and Ashley for third, right? That's what it looked like. When they sent those three off, I was like, sweet, we got at least third locked up. Based on positioning, it does look like it is third place, but who knows? We'll see how the call outs go and how when they do the call backs go between them. And the call backs were pretty wild as well. I mean, the call backs were a lot of changing positions in between all of them. But I think what's important to talk about, because people weren't really a lot of, obviously there's people who have their fans. Everyone has their fans. Laura Lee has a lot of fans. And they were like, a lot of them were like shocked at what happened. They're like, I can't believe it. Right. It was one of those things, but it was clearly evident. She had, too much muscle. She wasn't in the top three and it kind of defined it right there. So it was an awesome moment. I was trying to contain my excitement for it. And then at the end, when they did the call back, they were changing positions back and forth. And so let's go ahead and watch a little bit of that in that top three callback when these girls were changing positions. So everyone is off the stage now. Okay, so the callback happens, and then you have Ashley, Jennifer, Maureen, right? They are all in just the numerical order of the position they were called. I think they're actually just called back on stage. They came back in the position that they were called back on stage, and then they did the walks, they did the turns, and then as you'll see, momentum kept kind of shifting, and we're like, who's winning? Who's first? Who's second? Who's third? When there's three, it's a lot different than when there's four on stage, because when there's four on stage, you kind of don't know who the winner is, right? Because you have first and second in the middle and you have third and fourth on the outsides. But then all of a sudden Jennifer moves into the middle, right? Jennifer moves in the middle and we're like, oh crap, she's going to win it. She's got momentum and all the fans are cheering. It's a crazy experience. If you've never been to an Olympia, like try to do it at least once in your life because it's so exciting. It's so fun. So Jennifer gets moved in the middle. The crowd erupts, everyone's going crazy. And we're like, man, is she winning? And I was thinking to myself, with Jennifer, I was like, she could win. They like her in this conditioning. Now, that's the thing to talk about with Jennifer too, is that Jennifer's conditioning wasn't the best conditioning she's brought. Last year was the best conditioning Jennifer was brought, but it didn't help her, right? Just because she had better conditioning, it doesn't mean she's going to win. And I was talking to Jennifer a little bit before the Olympia. She was talking about her posing and all the little tweaks she's been doing. And she also talked about what her conditioning levels were. And I said that I always liked her a little bit softer as well. And that's what the judges' feedback was, that she was just a little bit too hard. And she said, I'm going to try to find the perfect balance between last year and this year's conditioning. And I think that's going to be my winning recipe. And I definitely think she did do that. Now, remember, I've talked about all year that Jennifer doesn't bring a balanced body fat level from upper to lower body. Her body does not lose body fat evenly, right? And that's what's awesome about bikini, is anyone with any any physique or any disadvantage can generally offset it to some capacity, right? And Jennifer's disadvantage, her thing is she doesn't lose body fat equally on her body. She doesn't have body fat distribution at equally on her body. If you look at Ashley, when she leans out pretty fluidly. Her upper body, lower body leans out. And as you see here in this turn, Ashley was moved to the middle too. And everyone was excited. They were like, is Ashley going to get another one? Is Ashley going to do it? Is she going to get the repeat? Right. It looked, there was moments there where it looked like that, but it was just, they were just moving people around, getting judges a different look. It looked like at the end when they kept moving everyone around. And then I think at the end, Maureen would held the middle at the very end. And so it kind of looked like Maureen was going to win the show. Actually, I did a review and I thought Maureen was going to win the show, because looking at Jennifer's conditioning in comparison to last year and this year, and in comparison to like Ashley, she did look a little bit softer. Remember, that's how they like her. It's not that she can't get leaner. She can, and she has done it, but they don't like her as much leaner, right? They don't like Laura Lee shredded either, right? So they don't like Ashley soft. Now, if I'm going to give critique on them, I do think that Maureen was a tiny bit softer in the waistline this year. I think that Jennifer was a tiny bit softer in the glutes this year, but not in a bad way. It obviously worked, but that would be the only critique. And when we listened to Sandy talking about Jennifer, she had some feedback for Jennifer as well about her glutes.
Say, if you want to talk about, like, as an athlete, somebody, taking back the information that, you're being told from last year, and then, the feedback you get throughout the year, I thought Jen probably did that better than anybody. I still think down the road, I would like to see her glutes a little bit fuller. I thought they could have been just a little bit fuller, but I thought she brought the closest conditioning. You saw a little, the glute tie in just a tiny bit, and nothing in the hamstring, which is what hurt her, last year. And then again, she overshot it because then she came in way too soft, at the Arnolds, because again, trying to find that happy medium is, I don't know how I don't know how the coaches and these athletes do it half of the time.
So going into Sandy's comments about Jennifer and her glutes. Now, can Jennifer's glutes be fuller? That's the real question, because that's what she's saying. Okay, they could be a little bit fuller. I don't think it's really about her fullness. She has pretty full glutes. I mean, when you look at Jennifer, that's the thing about Jennifer. Structurally, like, she's built, I mean, honestly, Jennifer is built like a Jessica Rabbit, right? That cartoon character, Jessica Rabbit, who's just crazy hourglass. Like, her shape is just so beautiful. It's just like, it just doesn't even make sense how she's built. But when it comes to actual muscle tissue, do I agree that she needs more fullness to her glutes? I don't know if that's it. Honestly, I don't know if that's really what it is for her, because it doesn't, to me, look like she needs more fullness to her glutes. I'm thinking that what is confusing is that she needs a little bit more detail to her glutes, because she is one of the softer ones from the back, but you can't blame her for that because they like her softer. So what do you do, right? What do you do to get the detail when they like you this soft? How do you get the glutes to look nice and full, like Sandy's asking for? Well, honestly, the only way to get the detail out of it, if they like you this soft, is to get a little bit bigger. So that's probably when you go around the bout, right? Around the wagon, and you figure out, okay, how do I do that? What she's asking for? That's going to be the answer to it. Is she doesn't need to really be leaner, because it doesn't work for her, right? She found the perfect level of conditioning. Jennifer, don't change your conditioning. This works great for you, right? Does she need to be fuller to show more detail to hang with, to keep and retain the title? She's the first Bikini Olympia champion to regain her title, which is pretty amazing. And she could tie Ashley next year to be the most, or the tied for the most winning, right? Ashley has 3 Olympia championships, and Jennifer now has 2. So she can tie the record for Bikini Olympia championships next year. What does she need to do to hold everyone down for 1 year? Laura Lee needs to show up 100% for Jennifer. If Laura Lee shows up 100%, Jennifer will probably not win, right? No one will win if Laura Lee's going to win that show if she shows up 100%. Jennifer, to maybe hold her off another year, would be, fill out the glutes a little bit more so that detail can show through the body fat, but keep the body fat the same, because they don't like you leaner than that, right? Especially because her upper body leans out a lot more than her lower body. Her shoulders look too sharp when she gets that lean. So that seems like that's going to be the recipe that she's going to be going after next year. That's what Sandy means by that. But let's go ahead and jump into now Maureen. Obviously, Maureen came in second this year. She loses her title of the Olympia champion. Now, one of the things I will say about Maureen, I've gotten to know her a little bit at the Olympia. There was a photo shoot that she was at. I was not in it. I was just at the photo shoot at the gym. We're just like hanging out and talking, and just talked to her in a podcast too. I did a podcast with her during the Olympia weekend. It was really cool to get to like know her. I've always, I've known her, but ever like that. And her mentality for this sport is so good for this sport. I gotta admit, guys, like when we talk about championship mentality in bikini, Maureen absolutely has it. She's a great representative to the Olympia. And I want to go into what it was, and what really like did that for me was I asked her, I was like, when you're defending the title, it's a lot of pressure. All right. Even just as a coach, all right, it's a lot of pressure. Like my sleep sucks the last, few weeks before the shows. Like my mood changes, feel bad for my wife because I'm like stressed out about the Olympia. The poor girl has to deal with it for about 10 weeks. But it's just so much pressure to do the Olympia, right? Especially if you're the defending champion. I asked her, I was like, hey, how are you feeling? You know, how's everything going with you with the Olympia? And she's like, oh, it's fine. And I was like, no, like for real, like, how's it going? Like, I understand what's going on. It's tough. She's like, no, I don't think of it that way. The way I think of it is I already won one Olympia title. And for me, that's even crazy. Like, that's crazy that I even won one. And if I never win one again, then so be it. I did it and I'm happy. I accomplished more than my goals. And if it comes again, great. I'm going to try, but I have no pressure anymore. The pressure was gone now that I've already won it. Now I'm just having fun. And I was like, that's such an awesome mindset to have. And you girls out there can learn a thing or two about that, because when I hear about these girls that are like going to nationals and maybe they placed 5th at national, the next national they placed 7th, they're like, I lost 2 places, this and that. I'm like, there's a totally different thing. It's a totally different girls that are there at that show. It's not like the Olympia and you're losing to the same girls every time and you lost 3 spots. Like, you just, different people showed up and you placed lower because different people showed up that were better than you. But even at this level, Maureen's like, if I win one, it's great. And that's just the right mentality to have, because bikini is crazy and it's a volatile sport. You need to understand you're probably going to lose a lot more than you're going to win in bikini. And that's just the way it is. You could be too muscular. You could be too lean. You could be not lean enough. You could be, you could look at all these different body types. Look at Jennifer, Ashley, and Maureen, 3 completely different body types, 3 completely different levels of conditioning. It's going to be per person. And that's why bikini is an art form. And that's why it's going to be per girl. It's going to be a lot different per girl. Look at the muscle that Laura Lee's carried and has done well for her. Look at the muscle that Amy has carried and has done well for her. And versus an Ashley. Look at the shoulder bases between them, the hip widths between them. It's all completely different. So where could Maureen have been better at this Olympia? I think is what it comes down to. Why did she lose to Jennifer this year? Well, one, Jennifer was on this year, so you got to take that into account. Jennifer was where they wanted her to be, in her conditioning. And hats off to Jennifer. I saw her as well about a couple weeks before the Olympia. And when I saw her, I was like, she looks a little soft to me for being 2 weeks out from the Olympia. I think she's going to need to pull it together a little bit. But I will admit, I only saw her in shorts. Like, they weren't like, I didn't see her full bikini. So she put that together at the end there and really brought it. Now, was Maureen off is the question. And is that what caused Jennifer to win? I don't know. I don't know if Maureen was 100% on, if she still would have lost to Jennifer. It's kind of like the Laura Lee situation, right? If Laura Lee's on, no matter how good everyone else is that day, she's still going to win the show, right? It's the people need Laura Lee to be off to win the show, right? She's that good. Now, Jennifer, she has a little bit closer of a margin between Maureen. If Jennifer's 100%, does she beat Maureen at 100% every time? I don't know if that happens, actually. Maureen is a little bit off. She left a little bit of room there to Jennifer to creep through that window and get her title back. And Jennifer came exactly as they wanted him. Where did Maureen mess up? Well, as they talk about in the podcast too, and you can watch this, I'll have it in the description. The Femme Flex Friday did an awesome podcast and review with Sandy. Maureen, her suit and her tan, right? Her suit is a little bit dark for her tan. Her tan was dark, and that was the thing. Her tan just came in a little bit dark, which made the contrast between her suit and her tan not really pop. You want a bright, vibrant color that creates like a jewel tone color that creates some pop. And this one, unfortunately, because of how dark her tan was, it really kind of muted her out a little bit. And so when I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking at her, how dark her tan was versus everyone else, I do think that hurts her a little bit. But one of the main things I think that hurts her is her core was a little bit softer than I think it should be. And that was one of the things, the critiques I had in the bikini review going into the Olympia, is that her core needs us a little bit of detail. You don't want to be shredded in bikini in your core. You don't want, turtle shell abs in bikini, but you do want a little bit of detail. You do want to be a little bit tighter in the actual core. And I think if she does that in next year and she gets a little bit of detail in her core, comes in a tiny bit tighter, picks a toned suit that creates a lot of contrast. Last year she wore pink. It's going to do a lot better for her skin tones, especially if she's a darker, tan's darker. So that would be my only critique for her. And I think that she can also regain her title back too. Right now, moving on to, I'm sure a lot of you guys are waiting for, moving on to Ashley Kaltwasser, right? What did we do? How could she be better next year? What was the actual judges' feedback? So first off, we did a full bikini review. It's on her channel, and I will post that video in the description as well, where she did a full review of what the judges' feedback is. So I won't go into it too much in detail since we've kind of already covered that. But Ashley, again, and this is the difference between between all the athletes is every athlete is going to be a little bit different on what they want to see from each athlete. Ashley is an athlete that they like to see a little bit leaner. So finding the balance for Ashley is always going to be the tricky part for her. Is going to be, how do we find, I guess I should say for us, since I'm her coach, but how do we find the balance that the conditioning they like? So when you look at her and you look at Jennifer, you say, wow, that's a totally different level of conditioning. And absolutely it is. It's a totally different level of conditioning. But when you look at what they want her to be, what they award her when she's winning shows, we've tried coming in softer, right? We've tried bringing in a softer Ashley Kaltwasser, but they don't like it. It doesn't get rewarded. She gets pushed down. Even at I guess there's no such thing as a small bikini show, but even at, like, I would just say like a regular bikini show where it's not a tier 1 bikini show like the Olympia or Arnold, like a tier 3 bikini show where it's, I guess, technically a little bit smaller. She could lose those shows because we tried to bring her in a little bit softer. And we're talking not a lot softer, like just a few pounds, like a couple pounds usually. And it's like, whoa, she's too soft. And I'm like, it's not much softer. Like, we're talking, I mean, there was one time it was like almost 2 pounds up. And they're like, yeah, she's just a little bit too soft. I was like, dude, you asked for her to be a little softer last week. She looks exactly the same, but we added like 1.5 pounds and she gets dinged for that, like 2 spots. Right. So that's how crazy bikini is, how hard it is and how fine tuned you have to be. But they do like Ashley a little bit harder. So they do say, she could be a tiny bit softer. And we did bring a tiny bit softer conditioning from last year to this year. One of the videos that Tyler did earlier in this year, he went over the bikini criteria and he used Ashley as an example. He said she could be a little bit softer. And so we did that. Of course, we brought it in. We always are going to listen to the judges. They have a ton of respect for the judges and what they say. But did it make a huge difference in her overall physique? And I think, yes, I think the fullness this year was the best that she had. I do like having the ability to feed her a little bit more, to fill her out a little bit more. And the judges could see that she has that more vibrant, more round look. And the thing is, hats off to Ashley. She's been the only competitor to last to be able to mold her physique throughout the years from show 1. Remember, this is her 10-year anniversary of when she won her first Olympia. So she won Olympia 10 years ago. She's still top 3. That's crazy. Who's doing that, right? Who's doing that in any division right now, right? It's like her, like Sid Gillen, right? It's like there very few people are hanging there. Ronnie Coleman, like it's some crazy stuff what she's doing. It's like it's insane. And I'm super proud of her for it. And yeah, she could come in a tiny bit fuller, but here's the problem. Will she lose her lines in her tie-ins if she does? Now, Ashley is not like Jennifer where she stores more body fat in her legs and her upper body by an extreme amount, but she does store more body fat in her glutes than she does in her upper body for sure. Most women do, almost all women do, really. But so it's a delicate balance and a delicate line we have to travel, of that fine line of how much conditioning can she bring, how much fullness can she bring before she gets too soft. Given the opportunity, if someone said, hey, Adam, let's run it back and you could change whatever you want with Ashley. We're going to run it back and we'll give you a chance to win it again next weekend. I'd be like, nah, we're cool with third. Like, I think that there wasn't much more we could do with her. Here's the thing. The judges said nothing about her needing to be fuller, like in terms of her overall muscle. They didn't say anything about her glutes needing to be bigger, her shoulders needing to be bigger, anything. They said maybe her conditioning is a tiny bit tight. And that's when they say it like that, and they're always like, maybe, like they're trying to find something. They're like, maybe her conditioning is just a little bit tight. Like they're like giving you this weird, like roundabout answer of not saying it's too tight, but it's kind of tight, then you're pretty much walking that line and you pretty much nailed it, or close to it as you can. Within a margin of error of probably a pound here. So, yeah, I'm happy with it. I think that she's put on a lot of muscle. She's been able to hang. Everyone has basically said, there was not a single judge we heard from that said, put on more muscle. 2 years ago, they said, put on more shoulders, right? 3 years ago, it was like more shoulder, more glutes, right? Nothing now. Crickets, nothing on the muscle. It's all conditioning. And that's it. So for her, does she have a chance at winning? I think so. As you heard Sandy say, it could have went any 3 of the ways with those 3 girls, and she would have been totally fine with the results. I think anyone of the fans would have thought the same thing. I don't think anyone would be upset if Maureen won. I don't think anyone would be upset and question it if Ashley won. anyone would be upset if Jennifer won. I think it's all the argument for all three of them because it's bikini. It makes sense. It kind of what happened with bodybuilding happened this year too. No one would be upset if Hottie won, if Derek won. Well, I guess a lot of people would be upset if Derek won from Hottie's country. but when you look at Samson Dowd too, there was like just different things. Samson was the biggest, right? Derek was the best from the back. Hottie was by far the best condition from the front, and had the most detail from the front, right? So it's like three different things. Like, which one do you go with? And those were both the situations for the Olympia and for the Mr. Olympia and for the Bikini Olympia. It was like, who do you kind of pick? What do you prefer? And it really just comes down to preference at that point. And they went with the curvier, rounder type, which was Jennifer. Jennifer is really wide set in the hips. She's got a crazy good structure. She's so round and curvy. She looks edited, just like walking around, like she's wearing a filter, but she's just like walking around. Crazy, crazy structure. Everyone loves Jennifer. Great representative of the sport. With that, I think we can go into now fifth place, which was Issa. And Issa, amazing year for Issa. Looking at Issa's placings, like this year and how she's transformed her physique. Issa has kind of been hit, I would say, probably like kind of the worst in bikini when it comes to the changes that have been made in bikini. And I don't want to say change, but like the evolution of bikini. People call it the evolution or changes that are. So Issa wins the Olympia. She's never been the best from the back. She never has been, right? She's never going to be the best from the back. That's just not how she's built, right? She wasn't blessed in that department from having these crazy good tie-ins and crazy full glutes. That's just not how she was built. But in 2019, I think it was when she won, if I'm right, 2019 when she won, that wasn't as big of a thing. You didn't need to have as deep of tie-ins. You didn't need to have those tie-ins in 2019. And then in 2020, when Janet won with full tie-ins, it changed the game a little bit and you needed to have tie-ins. So it changed on her in that way where she needed more tie-ins, right? And then she was playing catch up. And then the next year she got hit pretty hard at the Olympia with the lower placing. And then she needed to, work on her glutes. All of a sudden it became the current standard changed. Now you need tie-ins, and it hit her the worst. Then it kind of started switching on her because she has a really X-framed physique. She's got a very X-frame in her physique. If you really look at Issa and you really know what you're looking at, she actually has like a petite figure structure. Like she's probably more figure than bikini, but she's just so petite that she would never have enough muscle for figure. So she's got like a micro figure structure. Her hips aren't super wide. She doesn't have crazy tie-ins. She's got a high, wide lat. She's got a wide clavicle base in her shoulder. These are like all really good. She gets really conditioned. These are all really figure type things. Her legs get super conditioned where she can get the striations in her legs without the quad striation, without the cross striations. So these are all things that, really suit a figure physique more. And then now that there's a clear definition between the figure, and then Tyler's doing these videos saying this is what we're looking for, all the judges are super aware of it now. We're not looking for the X-frame. So Issa got hit kind of twice. She got hit with the tie-ins, and now they're looking for an hourglass shape, not an X-frame. And Issa has an X-frame, right? So it's an unfortunate thing because this is a champion. She loves the sport. She's super passionate about it. I love her passion. I love seeing how dedicated she is to the sport. I love seeing that part of it. And with her, she got hit twice. She got hit. Hey, now she needs tie-ins and she has a hard time getting them. Now she needs to not have the conditioning in her legs be so dense and so striated, but she needs to be conditioned, and that's going to come with some condition. That's to show her tie-ins, and that's going to come with her being so lean that she looks dense, right? And then she can't have an X-frame. How are you going to get rid of her X-frame? So like, there's all these things they're trying to figure out at their camp. I do think that they did the best job they possibly could have with her scenario. But she was overly conditioned in her legs. When she first walked out, I saw her legs and I was like, I'm seeing a lot of flickering of muscle fibers, right? When she's walking, I'm seeing flickering. And that's what I look for, is that like flickering, those striations, like each step the athlete takes. If I'm seeing too much flickering in the muscle of like the muscle fibers, I know that when they start turning around, I'm going to see a lot of detail from the back. I'm going to see too much detail from the back, hamstring separation. But here's the thing. How do you get the tie-ins to show up without having some hamstring separation if that's how the athlete naturally leans out? How are you going to get the flickering of the front of the quad to show up without softening up the back so much that it's not impressive anymore enough for her to place, right? Some people just have a hard time with these things. And the answer is she needs more muscle to push through more fat so she can avoid the flickering of her front of her legs, avoid the hamstrings getting so tight in the back, and the muscle can push through the body fat, hiding the hamstrings, hiding the flickering of the quads, but still showing the tying. And that's going to take some time. I think that if she has a full year's time, I don't think she plans on doing a lot of shows. I don't know. I'm good friends with her coach. I would doubt they're going to do a lot of shows this year because she has some muscle to build. And if she builds that muscle where she can push through that little bit of body fat, then she could be and regain the title again. I mean, great physique. She's still super young. She still can put on a lot of muscle. I don't think that there's going to be any issue with her putting on enough muscle if she gives herself another year. So I think next year is the year for her. And I told her coach at the beginning of this year too. I was like, first I was like, you might get her a title back. She might be able to get a title back with how she's looking now. And then I saw her next to people at a show. It was a little less impressive when I was seeing her next to everyone at the show. And then I was like more obvious because you got to have someone like next to someone to really, really tell. And I was like, yeah, it's going to take you another year, buddy. I'm sorry. Like, she just needs a little bit more size. And you could see here, the tie-ins, they're getting a lot better. She still needs a little bit more glute fullness in this outer edge here. She needs just a tiny bit more, either more fullness to her hamstring to kind of blur the lines where it's not seeing those striations, and then a little bit more glutes on the tie-in so to push through the body fat here, but just a little bit dense. Now I want to give them, I don't want to, bash, I want to give them credit. This is the best I think she could have brought with the current amount of muscle she has. I think that this has nailed it. I would have had her in 4th place over Laura Lee, even with Laura Lee's routine being so good. Sorry, that's where I would have had her. I do think that she wasn't full enough and was a little bit too tight to break into the top 3, but based on Laura Lee being a little bit overly muscular, I do think Issa technically fits the criteria a little bit better. Who do you go with? Someone who's clearly the biggest on stage, like clearly in the top 10, the most muscular, the biggest glutes on stage, or do you go with someone who's just a little bit too tight and needs a little bit more glutes, but her stage presence is almost as good? Laura Lee's really, really good. I would go towards Issa a little bit on that one. I might even push Amy up one spot over Laura Lee in that scenario, but it's a good argument. It's a tough argument. That's a tough call to make. And in bikini, you could make an argument for anyone, So that would be my take on it. But a great job over there. They did the best. I think they did the absolute best they could have with given the scenario for what they're dealing with Issa. What I wanted to go into is I want to go into Phoebe as well, because last year she was 7th and this year she was 11th. And when I don't talk about Phoebe, people are like, "Oh, you're ducking the conversation." I'm like, "What are we talking about?" I'm an open book from A to Z. So Phoebe plays top 15, which is awesome. She placed 11th in this show. What does Phoebe need to do, and what happened with Phoebe where she dropped a little bit in placings, right? So let's go ahead and go into that. And I do this too because one, I love Phoebe because she's awesome about talking about the things, the struggles of the bikini, of competing, the balance of everything she talks about in the podcast. She's going to post a consult kind of we did after the Olympia, or I guess you could call it a post Olympia review for me and her of what she did. So I only, of course, always say things that she's comfortable talking about, and she has been and has been out there about it too with her podcast. One of the things that I think this is the only thing that really holds Phoebe back. I think structurally, structurally she's crazy. Like when you really break down her structure, who's really built like Phoebe, right? Like think about it. Like who's really there with that tiny waist, with that wide clavicle base, with round full muscles that have grown even bigger now. They don't look like last year. They wanted her to be fuller this year. They said more in the shoulders, more in the arms, fill out your frame. You're a tall girl. We want you fuller, right? She did that. She clearly did that, made a huge improvements, right? The beautiful round muscle bellies where it looks like we just like filled them up with air. That's what you want in bikini, that round full look where it looks like your muscles are going to explode out, right? Like you just shove them full of whatever, water or glucose, whatever, right? And she did that. She definitely did that part of it. Where did she drop the ball, and where did I drop the ball too? How does she go from 7th to 11th? Well, 7th to 11th is not a big thing that happens all the time. You could see some of the people who play 7th or 8th this year. I think Ashlyn was out of the top 11. She's back in the top. She's back in the top 10 again. So like that's going to happen when you're in those like 8 through 12 spots. They're going to trade spots all the time. So it's not like a big deal. That's a good thing. Anyone top 15 is killing it, right? But where I think it is, I have a little bit of I guess I'd say a higher expectation for her because I know how good she can be, right? Because structurally the potential is unlimited, right? And the thing about Phoebe is she's a very humble, very thankful, very just I don't want to say, I guess humble is the right word, right? She doesn't see it the way everyone else around her sees it, how good she is, how really good she is. But structurally, muscle belly wise, all the positives, like who looks like her? It's crazy. Very few people. So that being said, the only problem I think that Phoebe has, and she's public about it, so the reason I'm talking about it is that in her off seasons, she needs to stay a little bit closer to her in-season weight, her in-season body fat, right? The problem with this prep is, we lost a lot of weight for this prep, almost 40 pounds going into this Olympia prep. It's going to be tough when you're losing, close to 40 pounds going into an Olympia prep and everyone else is losing, 15. Of course there's a disadvantage, right? Of course there's going to be a disadvantage there. You're talking about a lot longer period dieting. Your skin is going to have to get tighter again because you lost a lot of size, right? 40 pounds of body fat, it's a lot of size. And so for her to have that shrink wrapped skin look, that where you're seeing all the detail, where her conditioning's there, where her body's not tired and she's not grinding through preps and she can go into it healthy and feeling good. And we're not doing like these crazy cardio sessions and the calories aren't crazy hard, or crazy low. That's going to be the difference, right? That's how you can look vibrant on stage. And that's how you can look really just full and round and healthy and glow and have that I don't know what factor, right? That X factor where you're just like, man, she's glowing. She looks like happy, like a fitness model, like she wasn't dieted down, right? And even though she does look that way on stage, can it be better? And I think when you get to this level, that's the difference, right? That's the biggest difference because you got to understand, we're talking about winning a world championship here, right? It's not like we're prepping to win even like a national show. Maybe you can offset that difference. But when we're talking about winning a world championship, what sport can you do where you're not playing that sport 100% of the year with 100% intensity and win the world championship, right? Is there anything out there where you could do that? I mean, really? Like, even if it's not even a big sport, can you do that? Right. So that's her thing. I think that she could have been top 5 this year. I do. I think what the judges asked for is a tiny bit better conditioning, but I think there's a little bit more than that. I think that if she was just a little bit leaner in the off season, her skin could have been a little bit tighter and showed more detail, and that would have been offset. And also her waistline, I think, would have been a little bit smaller because you got to remember, if you're walking around all year with a smaller, like with eating less food volume and having less on your waist, you're going to have less of waist on show day. And a good example of that would be bodybuilders, right? Look at when we went through that a few years ago where everyone was talking about the bodybuilders. They're saying, oh, they have these big guts, right? They're talking about their guts. And everyone was like, oh, it's a steroid thing. And I'm like, dude, it's not a steroid thing. It is a food thing. These guys are eating too much in the off season. Their waistline is expanding with the volume of food that they're eating because they're bigger than they've ever been now. And therefore, when they lean out, their stomach still hasn't gotten back to where it was before. But now bodybuilders, what are they doing? They're staying a lot leaner nowadays, right? They're staying way leaner nowadays than they were before, than just a few years ago. And you're not hearing anything about the bubble gut anymore, right? What changed? Are they taking less steroids now? No, right? If anything, it's probably more. But they're keeping leaner and their waistlines are getting smaller and smaller and tighter, right? So that's the difference. And when we're talking about separating a world champion from, 11th place, like it's just a few little details. I think that's one of the judges who said that her waistline was just a little bit bigger. And I think that that's how Jourdain pushed her out, was that her waistline was just a little bit smaller than her. I think that Jourdain was a tiny bit overly conditioned on her legs. Actually, I think she was quite a bit over conditioned in her hamstrings specifically. I think her posing could have been better. And she left a window there for Phoebe to take that 10th spot. But I think that the waistline on Phoebe was just a little bit wider this year, probably because it wasn't fully adjusted yet back to the amount of weight we had to lose for this Olympia. I think the skin probably was just a tiny bit, just still tightening up from that big weight loss in that short period of time. And I really don't think actual body fat, she needed to be much leaner. I think it was pretty much spot on, but those details would probably make the difference there. And who knows if I'm right. The other things that go into it, is she going to be, because she's dieting so hard and doing so much cardio, has the inflammation in her body fully left yet? Right. So there's also a lot of factors, and I think, and she talked about it on her podcast, which is the only reason I'm talking about it now. Otherwise it'd be a private thing. But she I think is now in the mindset of like, yeah, I can be the world's best, and that's my hole, and I can plug that hole. And and I hope she does, and I'll do anything in my power to help that. And I would love to see it. It's one of my goals in life. It would be to get her a title, So yeah, hopefully we see that through. But that would probably be it. Now, I want to go over one more athlete as well before I call this a day. Let's go ahead and pull up Ashlyn. So congrats, Ashlyn. She's back in the top 10. She was in the top 10 before, and really happy to see her there. I like Ashlyn a lot. I think she's an awesome chick. Now looking at Ashlyn, the thing that everyone was talking about with Ashlyn, this is what I was saying about Ashlyn in the beginning. Now, Ashlyn has really good, she has really good muscle, right? In her legs, really round muscle bellies. But she doesn't have, in her upper body, she's got a little bit too much density. When you see her shoulders, they're just a little bit too dense, a little bit too capped off. It just looks a little bit like a mini figure girl in her shoulders and arms only, not in her lower body. Her lower body is round and full. Now, if you remember me talking earlier about Amy this year, I talked about her lower body, her legs being too round and full and too dense. That she's got a very similar leg to Amy, but it's not as dense and detailed, and that's the difference. So if you guys need to understand the difference of density and detail, you can look at Ashlyn's leg and you can look at Amy's leg. They're both similar heights, similar muscle size, similar large quads of that upper quad part where it's really round and full. But Ashlyn's is a little bit more bikini, and Amy's is a little bit dense and a little bit striated. And that's what I'm talking about between the difference between the two, because you could pull this amount of muscle off if it doesn't have the density and striations in it, right? Now, looking at Ashlyn, what hurts her is that shoulder base, those capped off delts being a little bit too much. It's a little bit too much for bikini. And I think this is why she's posing this way. If you look at her posing, she's posing with her back shoulder. It's very, we call bladed, right? Where it's not profile, like it's not facing like full on. It's like, we call bladed, like a razor blade, right? Like it's to the side versus like being more opened up. They do want to really promote that hourglass shape. So you're seeing a lot of girls want to kind of be more bladed these days with that back shoulder being back. And in her scenario, I think that she's trying to do this because she does have those crazy density to her shoulder, that density that can look a little bit harsh for bikini, look a little bit much for bikini. And I think that is why she's posing that way. And also why she has hair covering her right shoulder, like the hair is covering her right shoulder. I think to kind of soften that shoulder up to not look so bad. But the problem is when you do that, you're going to trade things for it. You're going to trade your balance for it because she already has big legs and now she's shrinking up her shoulders. So what happens? Well, her shoulders look out of proportion to her legs because they're looking, not that the muscle's not there, but the width of her shoulders isn't there now, right? The actual clavicle structure, the structure of the shoulders isn't there now. Don't get me wrong, the muscle's still clearly there, but she's shrinking it up and now it looks a little bit more out of balance. I think it's better for her to pose a little bit more opened up, maybe still keep the hair on the shoulder, but pose a little bit more opened up, and then just take it easy on those shoulders and not be so come in so dense and so hard and so round on those shoulders. And on those, you could even see her triceps are really popped out too. I think that would be very helpful for her. And she's kind of leaning forward in her pose. People have talked about that, or she's kind of leaning forward in this pose too. So for her, it's just some slight changes. I think her physique was very close to where it needs to be. Bring the shoulders down a little bit, bring that tricep down a little bit, open up the posing, correct your posing, and stand more straight up, tall and proud with your chest up high, right? And those little things I think would make a big difference for her because physique wise, very little changes need to happen. But of course, there should be very little changes that need to happen when you're 8th in the world. There's the difference of going 8th to 1st in the world is very little. It's not a lot. You don't need a major change to do that. So congrats to her. I'm happy to see her back in the top 10 where she belongs. And with that, guys, I guess that is it. What I want to do here is go into some of your questions now. I'm going to go into some of your questions. I'll bring them up on screen for some added, but yeah, I wanted to get the data back from everyone and talk about what the judges were saying and talk to everyone and just be real honest with what I think happened. I think I got everyone that I had notes on. So that's why this is a little delayed, because I had to get notes on everyone. Let's go ahead and see. Here's a question, or more of a comment. Maureen's back pose was unmatched, so bubbly and so balanced. Yeah. When you look at Maureen, she really does fit the bikini criteria really, really well. She has that beautiful skin complexion. She looks like the trophies that they hand out at the NPC shows. Like, she's just like a bronzed goddess, right? It's just like her skin complexion and skin texture is very, very, it's like a soft skin texture. I can't really put my words to it, but it just seems like if you were to like poke her, you would see like the skin just like absorb it, and it would leave like a little imprint for a second. Like, it's just soft, and it's like a subtle like skin tone, and it just flows really nicely, and you just don't see it too much. The shine of the lights, like Phil Heath had something like that, where it was like the shine of the light on his skin is just crazy, right? And she's kind of like that, but she fits the bikini criteria really, really well, because she's got a full tie-in without having an edge tie-in. And the benefit to Maureen is, and she even talked about in the podcast, she said, I like the bikini criteria right now because it's not shredded lean, and I can't get shredded lean. Like, my skin doesn't let me get shredded lean. I have thicker skin. No matter what I do, I don't get shredded lean. And so that's why she has that look too, which is awesome. You know, I think I love her look for bikini. I think it's a good thing for bikini. Here's a good question, actually. Is it beneficial to have wider hips, small waist, and wide clavicle base for bikini? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you pretty much got it nailed there. You know, you don't want to have an X frame, right? You don't want to be too X'd out with your frame. But having those round curves is very helpful. You know, some people will be limited by their hip width. Some people will be limited by their shoulder width. I've had some girls turn pro that I thought were going to do well. And then like I started seeing them next to pros on pro stages, and I'm like, oh, damn, her clavicle width isn't what I thought it was. When she was like winning NPC shows and winning, you know, national competitions, I was like, man, this girl's going to be good. She's killing everyone. Great shoulders, great this. And then I get her next to someone like, gosh, I mean, really, there's a lot of them. You get her next to like a Laura Lee, Alexis Raymond, you know, you get them next to these girls, a Savannah, you know, you get them next to them and you're like, damn, she is way smaller in the clavicle base. There's nothing she can do about that. Unfortunately, she's probably reached her limits here. That's a tough thing, but you know, you run into that less with the hips, but with the shoulders, if you have a narrow shoulder base, yeah, it's kind of sucks, right? It's kind of hard in bikini these days. Here's another question. For a newbie, how can you tell if you have thicker skin? Well, you're gonna have to lean out first to see how thick your skin is, and really if that's even a thing. You know, some people say it's not a thing. They just got to try harder and get even leaner. I don't know. I've ran into some athletes that no matter what we do, we just can't get their conditioning to be that tight. Maybe they have a genetic limit on how much body fat they can get. They don't have thick skin, and I'm just being confused by it. But I hear this from high-level athletes. I'm hearing a Miss Olympia say she's got thick skin, right? So that's something that other coaches are saying too, top high-level coaches. So you're going to have to lean out fully to know if you're one of those people. If you have that thin skin, it's so the thick skin, you just got to get a little bit leaner, right? The thinner skin, you don't get as lean because you'll look too grainy too quickly, right? So there's a benefit to both of them. And you just don't, you know, it's more of a theory than an actual fact. I believe it to be true with all the athletes that I've prepped and the people that I've ran into, and the more so the problems I've ran into than anything. But for Maureen, it works out really, really well. It's like a benefit for her to have that skin tone. Okay, question about Jourdain. What about Jourdain Lee? Is she just not conditioned enough? She's a bit on the slim side. Yeah, so it's not that Jourdain wasn't conditioned enough. It's that she wasn't. This year, she looked a little bit dieted down. Like she looked like she was just dieting for too long. Her legs, if you look at her pictures, go to NPC News Online. The pictures there from JM Manion. I think he was the one taking the pictures. You could see the hamstrings. They're very detailed, very separated. She's got a deep adductor. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and pull those pictures up and go into that from the back. And I think that's where she can make big improvements. Honestly, she's placing top 10 with being off, you know, on the backside, which is crazy. That tells you how good her structure is and how good her potential is, because that's pretty hard to do, you know, because she is a little off on this show. I would say honestly, in her backside, she's significantly off. So let's go ahead and take a look at Jourdain from the back. When we start seeing like that deep V, right, which is inside the legs, on the upper portion inside her legs next to her tie-ins, you see that deep V, those deep adductors. That's a little too much. You see those hamstring separation and the detail, that vertical separation of those hamstrings, it's just a bit too much. Her arms, she's posing a little bit too wide too, especially for how the arm size she has, which is a little bit on the smaller side. I think that it is, she just needs a little bit more size. She needs a little bit more fullness in terms of the body fat too. She's a little lean for this show, but again, another girl that's got a crazy good structure, and who knows how good Jourdain can be with the right, when she brings the right look to the show. Who knows? Maybe she could be a top 5 or 2. I think actually it wouldn't be out of the question that that she could be in the top 5. Okay, this is kind of a cool question. This is more of a prep question. How do you have the lower body fat come down without sacrificing the upper body looking stringy? My lower body is so stubborn, but my upper half is shredded. Is this just developing the tie-ins more? So this is a tough one. But hey, you know what's cool is you have a current Miss Olympia champion with a similar issue that you have right now. So clearly it can be done. Look at Jennifer's pictures last year. Look at how shredded she was on her upper body. And then her lower body came in, a little bit tight too, but it wasn't like crazy tight. She stores body fat more on her lower body than on her upper body, but you can make the difference. Yeah, the answer is probably going to be build more muscle so you don't look stringy up top. And then you just balance out the best you can. And here's the thing. A lot of this is an illusion. It's not really that Jennifer figured out a solution to have her body fat lose and distribution be the same from upper or lower body. The solution is she's found a way to pose it right. She's posing, I'm assuming this, she's posing a little bit softer up top because she knows she's harder up top, and she's posing a little bit harder down low to give the appearance of a better body fat symmetry. So that's what you're going to need to do. You're going to need to build muscle. You're going to need to pose better. You're going to need to pose for your body fat distribution. And it's going to be different for every athlete. And that's what makes a bikini so awesome. Okay. This is hilarious. All right. Sam asks, just for fun, Adam, would you give up coaching to be an Olympia judge? No way. No way at all. And one, just like any other thing, you got to work your way up to the Olympia. It would take years to get to the Olympia level judge. One thing I'll say is the Olympia level judging is always spot on because they do work their way up. You start off at an NPC level, you work your way to a national level, you work your way to a pro level, you work your way to a pro level head judge, then you work your way to a Olympia level judge. It takes years and years to get there. They wouldn't even with a guy with like me who does all these videos, and I would say it's pretty accurate on my assessments, wouldn't get that phone call right away where they're like, hey, we need you to be a judge of the Olympia. It would take me probably like 8 years or so to get there. Maybe more. I don't know. But I have judged shows. I love judging shows. But they don't really let me do it anymore because they're just, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good if I have an athlete in the show. Obviously I can't judge that class, but even if they're just in one class and I walk away from that class, if that girl wins the show, everyone's like, oh, it's politics. So even though it's not, so that it doesn't look good. So they just said to me, hey, we can't have you judging anymore. Because it's just, you have too many athletes and it is not good for perception. So I will say that's an awesome thing that the promoters do. They want to make sure that the athletes feel that it's fair, even if it is fair, which it always is. They want to make sure, hey, it looks fair. It feels fair. It feels good to the athletes. And and I'm never going to stop coaching. So I guess I'm done judging, unfortunately. That's really, really fun. Okay. One question we had, actually that black bikini one we will go into. I don't think we will have a black bikini, a black bikini. Are you saying a black bikini or a black, like as in African-American bikini? Can you clarify that? I don't think someone will win a show, an Olympia, in a black bikini. I do think very, very soon you will have an African-American or black, I guess I say black, because there's some that aren't from America, winning the Olympia title. I should make sure I answer that one right. That would be bad. So yeah, no, black bikini though itself, the actual bikini, there's not very many who look good in a black actual bikini. You don't see those suits doing really well in the top 10. That is funny. I could have answered that terribly. That would have been so bad. So no, I do. If you look at the call out of the call out that happened, and maybe I could pull it up, it was awesome to see. I think Phoebe could do it. I think she could be probably the first. She has the lines for it, and I'll go into Phoebe too. And it's just a matter of Phoebe just bringing in the right conditioning. And I think Phoebe bringing in the right conditioning is going to be more due to her keeping the good conditioning in the off season. If she's not losing, 35 plus pounds going into the Olympia, and she's losing, let's say, closer to 20, I think that her she could have probably placed top 5 this year. But when you make those big transformations from show to show, there's a lot of things that need to happen. Your skin needs to catch up when you're losing that much weight, that type of thing. And so I think Rihanna, if she had more size, could do it. I think Jourdain could potentially do it. She's got a really good structure. She came in a little bit tight this Olympia, which I think I will go into. She's a little bit tight. But those are the 3 that I see really having a shot at getting that Olympia title based on their structure, based on their structure. I think that those three would be, and I would love to see that. That'd be so awesome to see it. But that was a call out where it was like Rihanna, there was Rihanna, Viana, was Lexi in that one? Phoebe, Jordan. There was like, I think it was like 6 African American girls in like the call out. It was like the second call out, like the 2.5 call out, if you, because some were off. Awesome. It was really cool to see. So yes, absolutely. And that will happen within, I would think that will happen within the next 5 years. Okay, cool. Well, hey, you know what? I just saw a note here that says, based on Phoebe's podcast, sounds like she's learned the lesson, not going as big as she did in off season. I hope so. You know, I love Phoebe. She's like someone I've worked with since 2018. Absolutely love her. And she's very open about these things, which I really appreciate that she's open and talks about those things. And I think that is more relatable to people, because I think more people go through those struggles than we talk about. I went through them too when I was competing. It sucks to try to stay on meal plan all year long, right? But when you're talking about winning a world championship, it's not going to be comfortable. And that's just the reality of things. And that's the last piece of the puzzle for her. But she sticks to it. She stays, you know, only has to lose 15, 20 pounds maybe. For the Olympia next year, I could see her getting top 5, no problem. But losing 40 and going after a world championship, you know, it's a difficult thing to do. It's difficult on my end too. So yeah, I would love to see that. I think she could be the next one. The next rising talent, get top 5 next year. I think she could, her structure is so good. I think she could potentially pass Amy and get like 5th place. She could pass Issa and get like 5th place next year. Laura Lee would be tough if she brings her right shape. I don't think anyone could pass Laura Lee if Laura Lee brings the right shape. Laura Lee is pretty much unbeatable if she brings the right shape, which is crazy to say, but like everyone needs Laura Lee to be off to win. That's how good Laura Lee is right now. But she has to lose his muscle. She has to bring it right. Do you think Daraja has a chance at taking the title? Oh yeah, Daraja was in that call too. Do I think Daraja has a chance at taking the title? I don't know. You know, I like Daraja. I really like her a lot as a person. I think she's an awesome competitor too. I think structurally, she's kind of at her, I think structurally she's a little limited. When you put her structure next to a Rihanna structure, next to a Phoebe structure, next to Issa structure, Ashley structure, right? Jennifer, Maureen, like you put her structurally, you just face them all towards the front. She's wider in the waist and kind of smaller in that quad front. So I think structurally she has some limitations. She's very, very good though. And I'm not talking smack. I'm just talking at this level. You got to understand, like the genetic part of this is it's such a component that it's underestimated how big of a component the genetic part is when you get to that level, right? Yeah, you can offset your structure when you're, you know, winning a regular show, even a regular pro show. Sometimes you can do that. It's really hard, but you can still do that. But at the Olympia, it's like it's already the best of the best of the best of the best, right? To win an open and to win an overall in an NPC show, you got to have some structural potential, be the best of the best. Then you got to win a pro card, you got to be really good structurally. Then to win the overall, to get a pro card, you got to be really good structurally. Then to win a pro show, you remember when you start competing against pro, you're winning against all the girls who are already like 2 levels past proven their structure is so good. And then you have this, you know, crazy structure. And then we're talking Olympia, which is the best structure that ever lived on the planet, right? Fine-tuned with the best coaches, the best minds in the world. And then at that point, it's like everyone's so good. No one's really making that many mistakes. It does really come down to your stage presence. I mean, your tan hair, makeup, your structure is such a big component of that. I think there's a little bit of a limitation there for her. And I think if you look at, for example, like Ariana, who's an awesome competitor, structurally is just so much potential. You know, you're going to see girls like that just start passing her because the structure potential is there that she's kind of limited by. Phoebe is a perfect example of that. I mean, you can't really get too much better of a structure than her. Rihanna, I mean, structure is crazy good. Jennifer wins based on her structure. Jennifer's not the leanest competitor on stage. She's, you know, she's not by far, you know, she at the top 10, she might be the softest one. I think she is the softest one, but its structure is so good and her presence is so good. Like bikini's different, you know, bikini's a different thing. But anyway, thank you guys for all the support for everything this year. I really appreciate it. I'll be doing these videos again now that I'm a little bit slower. I'm going to Hawaii this weekend for the Hawaii Pro. That should be a good one. And then I'm back and I'll be back to my regular schedule. Things won't be as crazy. Sorry, things have been a little bit slower with the the reviews, but I'll jump right back into them when I get back from Hawaii. Actually, I'll probably just do the Hawaii review out there and then just go from here. So expect to see a lot more from me. Keep those questions coming into me. As always, teamelitephysique.com for worldwide online contest prep with this guy. And I will talk to you next time.